Hello, Lynn Watts here, and I'm continuing the discussion about careers and helping young students in elementary school explore the idea of careers. Um, you might think, why would you start so young in terms of talking with children about careers? And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. The first one is just so that kids start thinking about the future and connecting what they're doing now in school, what they're learning, the different skills that they're learning, so on, connecting that with something for the future. So that in some sense, they begin to see the purpose of what they're learning, which is not always immediately available to them. So the other reason, though, I think is that it's important for kids even early on to start thinking, what am I good at? What are my talents? What are my skills? What comes easy? What comes hard? And also, what am I interested in? So there are some important questions to start asking, and even at an early age, kids can start thinking about that. So in this video, though, what I want to talk about is 3 picture books that you could use to help kids just begin thinking about careers, and in particular, specific categories or specific groups of careers. So the first category. There are really 4 categories. I'm only going to talk about 2 today with these books. But the first category I want to talk about is creative careers. So what might fall into that category is an artist, a musician, a writer, anybody who uses kind of their imagination and their creativity to make something, design something, write, draw, that sort of thing. So the first book I want to tell you about is called What If? And this is a really cute, whimsical kind of book, a fantasy kind of book, imaginative book written by Samantha Berger. All right. And so in the story, it's about a little girl who likes to write. And it begins by asking, I like to write a story, but what if my pencil disappeared? What would I do then? And so then it kind of goes through the idea that even if you didn't have a certain thing available to you, you could then be creative in other areas. So in this case, it says, well, she'd fold up the paper and tell stories with that. In other words, she makes some origami shapes. And then if the paper was no longer there, then maybe she'd chisel the table and carve the chair, and she might make a airplane, and then she's off flying. And if that wasn't there, she'd chip and peel the paint on the wall, and then maybe she would create a story with a picture there. So it just goes on and on, just kind of helping you understand that when you have that creative spirit, there's so many different ways that you can express it. And in fact, the last sentence in the book is, as long as I live, I will always create. And that's what the book, What If? Another book that I really like a lot, and there's some other books by the same author, which I will talk about in a different video, but this book is called Iggy Peck Architect. And we may not think of an architect as being a creative career, but of course they're creating different structures, houses, buildings, bridges, all kinds of things. And the theme of this book is that it's a little boy who early on loves building things, all kinds of things. And they're very imaginative, kind of crazy. The adults in his life are not always appreciative of what he's doing. He's out in the yard building a sphinx out of clods of dirt, for instance. And his teacher in particular is not thrilled that he gets into his class and he builds buildings, and she has a particular problem with high buildings, which they go into. I won't tell you the whole story, but the eventual conclusion is that his ability to build a bridge winds up kind of saving the day in a situation where the teacher and the class need a bridge to be built. So very imaginative, creative story, really emphasizing the inherent talents that this little boy has, and how even though they seem a little wild and crazy as a young child, he grows up to be a weekly guest speaker who comes in and talks about buildings in Rome and Quebec and so forth. So Iggy Peck Architect is another great book. This book, by the way, is by Andrea Beatty, Beaty. And she has some other career oriented books that you might use for other categories. So, a couple of books you might use for the creative category to get kids thinking about where their skills are and what they might like to do and be when they grow up. As always, thanks so much for listening.